We do usually.
All right, we'll go ahead and start the meeting. Special meeting of TTSA, March 12th. Call to order. Roll call.
Director Wilson,
Here?
Director Cox,
Yes.
Director Wilkins,
Yes.
and
Present.
Director Clement,
Here.
and President Tessie.
Yes, here. All right, we'll do a pledge of allegiance. Ready to begin? Pledge of allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and
republic
for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God, indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty and
liberty and
justice
justice
for all.
for all.
Rochelle, mute the remote one when in the future, when we got people remotely. Be great. That is like a really challenging exercise.
That's the rhythm.
I'll open it up to public comment at this time. Have we received any? I don't see any public here. Have we received any written comments?
None at all.
None. We'll close public comment. Anybody have anything to change on the agenda? No order, no? All right, we'll move. Item 3, and we'll begin the regular agenda. The first item there is providing staff with direction on, this is based on Richard's letter indicating a retirement date in August 11th. Is that right? And so, time to make some decisions on how we want to go about finding a replacement to Richard. And so, staff, I believe at our direction, went out and solicited proposals from 3 different headhunting recruiting firms. They provided that information to us. We also have the option of not using an outside firm and going in-house. TTSA has an in-house HR person, Vicky Lafrano, and so I know that you guys had our decisions. I think that we're trying to make here on item 1 is whether we want to, how we want to go about this. We also have, the option to just recruit in-house, do it outside. I think we provided general decision to go and do it over recruitment. So I'm gonna just open this up for discussion.
Sure. Yeah, I think it was pending Vicky's availability to do it internal or not. And I don't think we had an answer to that at the last meeting. If I remember right, because she wasn't here.
We didn't have really a discussion on that. And so we've got 3 pretty similar proposals from these outside firms. So I don't know there, Vicky, if you're comfortable sharing with us your comfort level in having the skills and bandwidth, given your other duties, to conduct a recruitment.
Yes, so again, as Richard has provided his planned retirement resignation, effective in August of 2025. And as you're aware, I did reach out to the 3 recruiting firms, received quotes from them along with timelines. The quotes, I believe, ranged from 25 to 33,000, and ranged in timeframes from 14 weeks to 16 weeks. They also provided data related to partial recruitments. The one thing I would ask is that, at least it would be my personal request, that either we have someone provide a full recruitment or I do the full recruitment. So long way to get to the answer is that, yes, I would be able to provide the full recruitment myself. I do have the bandwidth to do so, and would be happy to lead that charge.
So Vicky, if we did it, if you took the lead on it, how would you see kind of approaching that as compared to, what we see in these proposals? Would it be, because they've got, stuff in here about, interviewing people, presumably board members, maybe key staff members, kind of tuning up the job description of the ideal candidate, some of those types of things. Would you see doing that as well as, you know, because we've got our standard job description for the general manager as well that we would put out there. So what are your thoughts on what an in-house recruitment would look like? Not an in-house recruitment, doing the recruitment externally, but with you leading it in-house.
Understood. I do believe, yes, and I do this, in a much smaller manner with any recruitment, but I would certainly reach out to the hiring manager and managers, in your case, either the full board or the ad hoc, whichever you prefer, as a starting point to get a candidate profile, determine what aspects, the board is looking for in their new candidate. If it was the will of the board, also reach out to staff, possibly the local GM group, possibly certainly the member districts, to determine what they're looking for in a new GM here at TTSA. So that would be my general approach. I believe if the board did want me to reach out to staff, for example, we have in our evaluating system, TrackStar, provides a feature, and it's a free feature that allows us to do surveys of staff. It could either be anonymous or it can be something that, you know, we can see the results and who it's coming from. There's different ways to obtain that information from staff if that is something that is desired by the board. I would probably generally think either an in-person meeting or email or a phone call to say the outside agencies, if that is the desire. I'd say generally speaking, that's kind of what I was thinking.
And what are you thinking from a timing standpoint, if you took the lead on it? In terms of what that schedule would look like?
Just looking at the other recruitment schedules from the three quotes that were provided, and knowing that our current general manager will be leaving mid-August, but more likely, I think we would need somebody hopefully by the end of July. So I'm thinking a 4-month time frame at the most, but I'd like to condense that down if that's possible. Meaning, if an ad hoc group is created, meet with that group immediately, if that is possible, figure out that candidate profile, get the, the recruiting materials created, post the job, probably collect applications for a month. Certainly, where would we recruit? The general places that we would recruit, just in general, for any TTSA position, I say any, the wastewater positions, and that's usually the BC Water and CWEA, but certainly reach out to probably a group of GMs, whether that's seeking, I don't know, some kind of list, a recruitment list or something like that, trying to reach out, do some email blasts. But I would say collect applications for a month approximately. Again, at the direction of the board or the ad hoc, whatever.
Thanks.
So Vicky, I appreciate your indicating that you might try and, not just go through the employment portals on these websites, but do some direct communication to other GMs. I don't know whether, I think Richard and I recently were in a meeting in which another GM mentioned that they used a recruiting firm for a senior level position, and his response was that he felt that firm was successful in actually using their network to get what they call passive candidates, people who aren't actually looking to respond. I don't know, I asked you I don't know if you had a chance to do it, to talk to some of the references that each of these three firms provided, and curious what kind of answers you got from them, and if, I think that would be that would be one of the, I would say, the potentially biggest upside of using an outside firm is the ability to potentially get more interest than we would through, just putting it on the BC Water and the other standard things. I'm wondering if that came up at all in your contacts that you talked to, that they felt that these firms, their eventual persons filling those positions are folks who came to the interviews were these passive candidates, that these firms actually still have connections out there that are gonna find folks that we won't find through more just standard advertising method.
I did have a little bit of time to reach out to the references, some of the references provided by these firms. And I received feedback related to 2 of the 3 firms. That was Koff and Bob Murray. And generally speaking, the feedback for both of those firms was highly satisfied. Individuals were highly satisfied. A lot of them utilize those firms when they're doing the higher level type recruitments. Some of them just had policies that said, if we have a recruitment of a certain level or higher, we will use an outside firm. One of them was still in the process of working with the recruitment, so they didn't have a lot of feedback except to say they've been very satisfied at this point. I will say that a couple of them did mention that they both ended up hiring in-house individuals. And they had stated that they had hoped for a little bit bigger candidate pool. Specifically, one of them was related to a utility position, and they just said, we just think that it was super hard at that time to get utility type positions to apply. So, but yeah, they had ended up hiring someone in-house. And trying to think of just the other feedback off the top of my head. Again, just that they were satisfied, they would do it again, but a lot of them also didn't either have the time or the bandwidth to perform that kind of recruitment in-house. One of them was also for their HR director position, so seemingly, you know, they literally didn't have a position at that time possibly to lead the recruitment.
Just looking through the different packets, one of the things that jumped off the page to me was Koff was not only the lowest, it had the shortest time frame. And on the side, I was talking to the NTPUD general manager yesterday, and he brought up something that I hadn't even thought of before. A lot of the federal layoffs and things, there could be a full new pool of people that could be, and I don't know, I'm not
Right.
in the engineering, I don't know where all those fit, but he said that potentially there could be. And by opening it up, we might get some people who we wouldn't have seen before. So thought I'd share that a little bit more.
I certainly think, you know, whether it's in-house or with one of these firms, that we wanna, you know, cast our net as wide as possible. Pennywise and pound foolish with the advertising side, to not do that. It's really just a matter of, you know, $30,000 working with an outside firm versus working internally. I mean, how many recruitments have you managed, you know, over the past 5-10 years? Quite a few. It's not,
Yeah,
this is not,
I don't know.
this is a special recruitment, but I mean, you've certainly gone through this process quite a few times. So, you know, I think both are really good options for us. We just, if we're gonna certainly take on one of these firms, we need to make that decision and
Get them under contract.
get them under contract, exactly.
So what did you do for your replacement? What did you guys do?
When my board decided to use our in-house HR person to do that.
And candidate pool was pretty good.
We ended up with 20 applications, 11 of which were qualified. And had 4 highly qualified folks worth coming in and doing interviews. And so,
Got
yeah, man. It was a fair amount of work for an HR person to take that on and, so that's really why, I don't know what else is happening on your timeline, but, you know, that's, you've got other duties as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we do the recruitment with Vicky leading it in-house, then she's obviously gonna have a high degree of involvement with it. I think she'd still have a high degree of involvement even if we hired a consultant. Yeah, there'd still be a role there. It's not like,
Right.
there's no involvement, so.
Dale, any thoughts?
Yeah, I've got some thoughts, you guys, but you know, I'm willing to go along with what the rest of you decide. But you know, I'm for, if we have a good candidate within the House, I say that hiring from within is just so positive for the morale and for people that are.
Dale? Dale, I don't mean to cut you off, but you're jumping ahead a little bit. I think.
Oh, okay.
We're not talking about, we're gonna do a full recruitment. And the expectation is that we have at least one internal candidate that's gonna apply, and we can talk about the merits of that person versus the outside candidates, but I don't think, you know, I think that we all are on the same page and that we wanna do a full recruitment to find the very best person for the position. And so we're
So-
not really deliberating on an internal candidate. We would encourage.
What you're saying then, Blake, what you're saying is that we'll go ahead and we'll reach out for recruitment. And if anybody internally wants to apply, they will be given the same type of review as any of the other candidates from the outside.
Correct. Yeah, yeah, and so really the decision point we're at here is, you know, the board needs assistance in doing this recruitment process, preparing, refining, leading and, you know, the job description, the brochure, determining, you know, what the brochure requires, you know, really, defining the needs of the district, the characteristics we're looking for, not necessarily just the job description, but the bigger values that we think is important for the next GM, and putting that together, going out and, you know, and then trying to turn over as many stones as possible, advertising it as many places. That person will be responsible likely for working with an ad hoc committee in the review of all the applications and helping develop the interview process and questions. And so the question is there's firms out there that do that. We have an in-house HR person.
Yeah, you know, like I say, I'm pretty easy on this. This is something that, my only fear is that what we've got coming down the pike, with the agency, with, hopefully the, land exchange, the surplus land, the MBR, we got a lot of stuff in the hopper. And, as long as whoever we get or whoever we find can jump on board and not decide that it's not the job for him after 3 or 4 months when we're right in the middle of some very important dialogue.
So my thought on this is that, you know, I've heard, you know, numerous comments about wanting to kind of maximize the number of applicants. And I think that would argue for hiring a recruiting firm, because I think the number of because I don't think that means that our in-house HR is completely sidelined in the process. You know, they can also be kind of beating the streets for applicants, and then have the advantage of one of the recruiting firms also doing that, as well as having the recruiting firm take on the bulk of the logistics of it, right? Because there's a certain body of work there, which would then it's basically a consultant that would be supporting the efforts of our in-house staff in this endeavor, as opposed to just leaving it on our in-house staff. So that would be my thought is, and the cost, it's $25,000 to $32,000 depending on which firm we pick. This is a $250,000 a year payroll position, and then you put fringes on top of that. It's probably 10%. The recruiting cost is about 10% of what the cost of this position will be to the agency annually. So, that's not, if these were significantly more expensive, I might think differently, but so my thought would be to bring in a recruiting firm to help us with it. I don't necessarily have a strong opinion on the three. I think you can kind of get good quality proposals from any one of them. And ultimately it comes down to the skill set of the person that gets assigned to the project as what's most important, I think, because they'll assign a person who will take the bulk of who will be doing the bulk of the work here. And then that person will help us through the interview process as well. So anyway, that's my thought.
Now, Dan, what you're saying is you think that whoever we hire as a headhunter, so to speak, will help us through the review process as well?
Typically, they wouldn't be making any decisions, but they would be scheduling interviews with applicants, doing some background checks. Some of those types of things is what I would expect they would do, as well as, helping, polish up the description of the ideal candidate. And then potentially, if we get a lot of applicants, we could get 40 or 50 applicants. There's an initial screening that has to happen to kind of get that down to a manageable number. I think if we designate an ad hoc committee to interface with Vicky and the head hunting company, the ad hoc committee will need to decide how much of that initial screening they want to be involved with versus letting the head hunting company kind of take a first cut at it. So those would be some of the things I would expect a head hunting company would help us with.
Okay, I understand. So as far as for the ad hoc committee from our directors, we would be screening only the people that the headhunting service would say that it's would be a good pick.
Potentially, yeah.
So we wouldn't have to sit back and review 40 or 50 candidates. We would have to review the top of the class that the headhunting agency would be giving us a list.
That's kind of what I would see, because sometimes you get, just, random applications of folks that are just not qualified. So I would think a headhunter could, along with Vicky, could kind of make that initial cut in terms of screening those out. And then I could see, the ad hoc committee then working to decide, who should be interviewed. And then we could talk about what the interview process looks like as well, and they could probably help give us some examples of what that might look like, whether it's just the five of us, interviewing half a dozen candidates or however many, or whether it's more extensive than that.
Well, the last time we did this, Vicky, you could help me if on this. I think we only had like 10 or 12 applicants, even with a headhunter, and not with Richard, but before Richard, when we hired LaRue, we didn't have that many applicants to go through.
Right.
There wasn't that much interest or there was a little bit of interest, but not very many applicants cut the mustard. And so basically, what it would be, it'd be the ad hoc committee along with Vicky to review the ones that made the cut. That's what you're
what I
saying.
would think.
Yeah,
Okay, well,
It's up to the ad hoc committee, then. How deep they wanna go,
so
Thanks.
if the board delegates the authority, I think the ad hoc committee can do whatever they want.
other thoughts, Dan expressed a preference to go outside. I really appreciate, Vicky, your
Yeah.
willingness
Yeah.
to take that on. I see some of the advantages Dan's talking about. You know, I think the cost is not so prohibitive that it bothers me either.
Yeah,
Anybody feel strongly about one way or the other?
I really.
I think, well, hearing that, I'm not opposed to retaining a firm as well. So then the question is we got 3
Sure.
applications.
I'd probably kick it, I'd be curious to hear from Vicky, you know, what your thoughts are of the 3 proposals and, you know, if you're envisioning yourself working with one of these companies, is there one of the 3 that you think could basically be the best fit from your perspective?
Again, just in speaking with some of the references, I received the references based on, Bob Murray and Koff. I did not hear back from anyone that had utilized CPS. And all of the references they were very good. So I'd probably go back, and I know that one of them specifically stated she was working with them right now, and as you stated, it depends on the bandwidth of the person that's assigned the recruitment at the firm. She was super, super satisfied at this time. They're just beginning their recruitment, so let's see, that was
And that would actually be kind of relevant from my perspective. I want to ensure that whatever firm we selected was available to start on this right away.
yeah, okay.
And I know Koff gave us the most aggressive schedule, which I liked, to reduce the amount of time we may have as a gap. Or if things can go really quickly, potentially having a short period of overlap even, which is probably not highly likely, but
It would be ideal.
would be ideal.
Yeah.
Would you, well, I guess I should have done that before now, requested when they would be able to begin working on it. And I didn't know that any of them specifically stated that in their quotes, they just gave a timeline.
Right.
So, and it's possible it is in there, I just don't remember reading that part. But I have no problem working with any of the firms. I don't know that I necessarily have a recommendation. Any of them would be completely acceptable.
I have to say, you know, I hate to judge a book by its cover, but when I looked at the proposals, I would say that the Bob Murray one, very unimpressive proposal to us. If that's the quality of work they do and we're trying to be shiny and look good out there, I was not impressed with their proposal. I thought that the CPS one, it's too bad you didn't have a chance to get a reference check on them. I thought their proposal was the nicest. It was the most clean. They had paper links. So that as soon as you opened it, you wanted to go to a section, you could go there. Then you didn't have to hunt around. They seemed, I don't know, they put together, I thought, the nicest proposal. Hopefully, again, I'm kind of judging a book by its cover, but I don't have a whole lot else to go on. They also, I would say, also, when I look at their references, there seems to be a higher number of kind of utility and wastewater agencies on their resume list that they've worked with, which means they've got just more contacts, I think, in our area. Koff does do some work. They seem to be a little more municipal focused than special district focused. So I'm trying to remember, was the CPS proposal, was that the one that provided a partial versus full, and was their proposal, their full one? Might have been the most expensive, if I'm not mistaken.
Bob Murray is the most.
Bob Murray? Okay.
CPS was somewhere in the middle. They did provide a partial and they did say that they would be 16 weeks.
So it sounds like Blake, your ranking was kind of CPS as being number one, there was Koff being number two, and Bob Murray being number three.
Yes, you know, again, just based on the proposals, references in there, clients, and then just. You know, again, they're gonna be trying to attract somebody to click on a link and find it, and I found their proposal, drew me in, and
I mean,
it was nicer.
we could provide, you know, direction to pursue an agreement with CPS, you know, contingent on their ability to, you know, initiate work within, I don't know if it's 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and then if they're not available to get started that quickly, then we could kind of work our way down the list.
And
I think that's a good idea, Dan. I'd agree with that.
I will state that I belong to it's an email group, but an HR group in the Bay Area, and many of them have stated that they utilize CPS HR consulting. I haven't heard their feedback, but I do
Okay.
know that they have mentioned that they utilize their services, so I'm sure they wouldn't say that if they didn't like their services.
Yeah, I mean, I know CPS and Bob Murray, you see those names out there, it's all routinely, you know, in terms of doing recruitments. I actually don't see Koff as much, but maybe it's just because they're not on kind of the radar screen of what comes across my desk. So, yeah, I think any of these companies can do it. It's a fairly straightforward process. And again, I think it's all about, you know, getting the ball rolling.
Right. Koff, also known as Gallagher, right? Yeah, Gallagher was the consultant we used on our comp study, which I know there's been some, probably different group of folks maybe that work on comp studies than recruitment, but
Correct.
I think I've heard of some level of frustration with Gallagher's performance on the comp study. So, another reason I think, you know, to maybe try something.
I'm with you, CPS.
And so, and then if we assign an ad hoc committee, you know, then staff can also call those ad hoc committees and come up in the negotiation process for the actual contract. And we give the ad hoc committee authority to, you know, make a decision on the signing of the HR consultant.
Yeah.
We can keep things moving forward. Bert?
Yeah. I agree that Koff and CPS are probably the top two. You know, I probably want to get a reference on CPS just to be safe, but it looks like they can all do the job. I mean, if you look at the resume of the candidates or positions they've filled, I don't think we got a problem either way.
Okay.
I kind of leave it to the team to decide at that point.
Yeah, so I guess my suggestion would be to select the board subcommittee. Maybe ask Vicky to probably contact all three of these companies, find out when they're available to start. And then let the ad hoc committee in conjunction with Vicky decide which one to hire. You know, I don't really have a problem with any one of them.
Yeah, and that sounds good. I would maybe also ask, you know, if we're leaning towards CPS, assuming they can make the timeline, to figure out who our project manager be and what project they've led, and just get a reference check. You know, company's only as good as the individual you're really working with, making sure that you get a positive response from that person.
Right.
Blake, could we hear Richard's thought on this?
Did you have a thought on this?
I don't have much of a thought, cause and the position reports to the board, so I just, my thought is I'm here to help.
Okay.
However possible, I'll take this chance to throw in it. My intent is never to leave the agency. I'm extremely thankful for the agency and what it's provided for me, so my intent is never to leave the agency in a bit of a lurch with like a crossover period, so maybe after the timing's figured out, if the board thinks there's some benefit to having some crossover with the new hire, I can negotiate that with my real boss. To work something out there as well, but,
The boss you share a house with.
yeah.
Yeah.
But as far as, I read through them, I don't really wanna impose my thoughts on it, because I think it's really, the board is hiring their new employee, I'm not hiring the employee for the board, so I don't think it'd be appropriate for me to weigh in, I guess. So,
Do we have Josh on the line?
he is on there.
Josh, I don't know if you, how much assistance you've provided other special districts in recruiting the chief executive. But if you have any advice in this process, I'd be curious to get that as we can kick this off.
Gee, I'm gonna sound a little bit like Richard. I have helped a number of boards over the years to recruit general managers. In most cases, the board and the HR department have run the recruitment themselves. I don't, the only one of the three proposers that I've dealt with directly is CPS. I'm aware of Bob Murray. I gave Richard both those names. I don't really know Koff at all, but the board has so much discretion here, and it really boils down to what process is most comfortable for the board, where you think you're going to get the most value and get the best result. And I think that's in consideration of what you're looking for in terms of your next chief executive and what your particular circumstances are. Obviously you're a little bit more isolated from the urban centers, so having the advantage of a recruiter may be a little greater just because they are more in the urban areas and have a greater reach perhaps than you might have if you're trying to do this yourself. And to some extent, you may avoid cannibalizing your own member districts. So, there is some value in this in that sense. But beyond that, I mean, it's really up to the five of you what makes most sense, how you want to lay this out and how you want to conduct the process. So I don't really have a lot more to add than that.
Vicky, on the references that you reached out to on CPS, one of them that's listed is Jennifer Jackson from Soda Springs. Seems like that's a very close neighbor of ours. We might be able to.
Sierra Lakes and County Water District, I think.
Yes.
See if I can remember who I reached out.
She was reference number one.
But the Zero Lakes.
Which one was that? I'm sorry.
I
CPS.
don't think so.
But who was the,
Her name is Jennifer Jackson, board member.
which district was it? The one.
Sierra
So
Lakes.
Sierra Lakes, in
Sierra
Soda Springs.
Lakes. Sierra Lakes, okay.
So she was the one who was hired. So I don't know that we would talk to her. We'd want to talk to their board member. They're a very small district. I was on the board at one point
Oh,
on
okay.
Sierra Lakes Water District when I lived
Yeah.
in Serene Lakes.
Yeah.
You'd want to talk to a board member there.
Well, she is a board member.
She is a board member. Okay,
Yeah,
okay, sorry. I didn't know that she was. So assuming we had got kind of direction in terms of how we want to move forward, hopefully selecting our consultant. We need to appoint an ad hoc committee to be available to work with them I'm just trying to think of touch points, if we're talking about a 4-month time period, we're here in the middle of March, that's April, May, June, July. It's about, things go really according to plan, that's, the process, I think, is 4 months, and then you've got the month for the person to probably leave their current job, so you're probably not, it is gonna be tough to probably get this person on board and have overlap, unless, Richard has some flexibility. I imagine the first two things, and I'm looking at the CPS timeline, is one, kind of doing that needs assessment, determining what we're looking for, so they can put that in a brochure. I think the other thing is, for us all, and I think you guys sent us the job description for all of us to look at this job description also and make sure, we think this is accurate. And Richard, I would ask you, this is a place where you could look at that and make sure this accurately reflects the duties you do and, plays out. I think the brochure is probably more our side, but the job description, and have you look at that, and, they've got a touch point where they come back, it looks like, for brochure approval before they place the printed ads. And so, there may be some special meetings we need to have between, to keep this ball rolling, or do we want to delegate authority to the ad hoc committee to work with the consultant, work with HR to potentially adopt a approved, a revised job description if there's any changes there, and approve the brochure so that, possibly even before our April board meeting, it's not gonna happen before next Wednesday. This job is being posted
Yeah,
out there.
So my thought would be to delegate as much as possible to the ad hoc committee, because I think that'll keep things moving more quickly. Short of obviously final interviews, right, which need to be the full board.
Right.
And if that includes, working with staff to get the, get the appropriate vendor under contract. I think it would be good for the recruiter to talk to each of the 4 board members to get their input as they're putting together the description of the ideal candidate. I don't think that final description needs to come back to the full board. I think we could put faith in the ad hoc committee plus Vicky plus the consultant to get that close enough.
So we get, as the board meetings come up and there's stuff to discuss, fine, but really the full board activity is gonna be the interview process. And the ad hoc committee is leaned on to kind of facilitate
Right.
all the other parts of the recruitment process. That would keep things moving the fastest, absolutely. We gotta wait for board meetings or schedule special board meetings, that's really challenging.
Right.
I mean, we could even put into that, the ad hoc committee meet once a week, but Vicky just to make sure that keep things going for everyone.
I think so I think that sounds really good. So
Now, as it relates to the ad hoc, I'd specifically like to not be considered for it, just because I've got, I'm concerned my schedule over the next couple of months could slow things down with some travel plans I've got and other things going on. So,
yeah, I have unfortunately similar concerns. I retire May 1 and I'm gonna be gone all of May.
I'm available. I'm here, so.
Yeah. It sounds like Bert and Scott are open to it. Dale, would you be good if Bert and Scott wanted to do it, or do you have a burning desire to
Well,
participate?
I will be, I'll be at, the next board meeting here, in March. I will be available for Zoom for April, and then I'll be back for the board meeting in May to continue on throughout the summer.
Great.
You know, Blake, you say that you're kind of don't want to be on the ad hoc committee? Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, my schedule could be a hindrance to it. You know, right in the peak of sort of going through the process, I'm gonna be not available. And so, you know, I certainly wanna be here for the interviews, and that's where the decision making is. I feel very comfortable with, you know, the other steps, you know, and Scott and Bert's ability to work with staff and the consultant to lead a good recruitment. There's gonna be touch points in future board meetings for us to provide input as well.
We could potentially get an update as to how the progress is going
Yep.
at the board meeting,
Yep.
just so we know what's going on.
That's great. So I think as board president, I have the authority to appoint an ad hoc committee. And so, given your guys' willingness, I'd like to appoint Bert and Scott to the GM recruitment ad hoc committee. So that gives Vicky you two folks to work with, and
Yeah, works for me.
Works for me.
okay, it's a big job, guys. Thank you for willingness to do that.
An official vote on down the road.
No, it's an appointment. Well, you can ask, I will ask our general counsel, Josh. Appointing, creation of an ad hoc committee is an appointment by the board president. It's not a motion action item, is it?
That's correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've decided on what firm we're gonna move forward with here.
We've prioritized them. Really, we've decided to. Yeah, our top candidate is CPS, and barring some negative response that Vicky gets in her due diligence to the ad hoc committee, you know, they would then move on to another firm, but whether it's their ability to take it on or a negative reference check. But yeah, our first priority is choice is CPS, and I'm hopeful that they're willing to take that on, and then we'll delegate to the ad hoc committee. If that doesn't work, you know, the authority to choose a second candidate, whether it's Bob Murray or Koff/Gallagher. Awesome.
Okay,
Yeah, there'll be lots more on this. I mean, I guess, you know, so not to get ahead of ourselves, but when it comes time for the brochure, one thing that's gonna come up is gonna be, you know, what are we advertising the compensation level at? And I know that we've got a, you know, contract with Richard, and I think there is a GM, even a step scale. There is for your position, but a lot of times, you know, that's not, I don't know whether we wanna continue.
Just post it legally.
Well, when we sign the final contract, it's gotta be an open session
Yeah, no,
item at
yeah.
a regular board meeting.
Yeah, I thought all job postings in California now had to be posted with a range on comp.
And so, I know that when we did the recruitment for my position, you know, the board has not created a wage scale for that position. It was just by contract for a certain amount. And,
So,
they,
Well,
right,
why
so
would we go to the range? I don't have a problem.
we have an adopted range, right?
We
And
do.
then I know we've got some draft work we're doing with Gallagher. Is that range likely to change based on the draft,
Yes,
upward or downward
upward.
by a significant amount?
That depends on board direction.
Right.
I can tell you what the current GM is gonna recommend.
Yeah, well, so I mean, at the moment, we've got an adopted salary range. If we update that prior to the job posting, I think we would use the updated salary range. If not, we would be using whatever the existing salary range is.
Okay.
I would think.
I mean, we're just talking salary range,
Right,
you know, we're not negotiating the actual
no,
final contract amount. There's gonna be a lot of contract negotiation items when it comes to signing the new GM. I mean, I don't know whether Richard, your current salary, I hate to put you on the spot, nobody likes to talk about money, but it's 280 or so, 280 per year.
Yeah, that's the real boss.
Okay.
I'm not topped out.
I'm
not topped out.
I'm just wondering whether, if we're gonna try and get this brochure out, if we put something like a 250 to 350 DOQ, depending on qualifications, range in there, we want to attract somebody.
Yeah.
And having a higher end, if somebody wants to come up here and has 20 years of GM experience and done $100 million, capital projects and is ready to take that and run, if we have somebody that's, got a little greener and,
I'd just be cautious about advertising a salary range that's different than what the board has adopted. I would think we would just use the one we've adopted. Otherwise, we're kind of making it up on the fly.
well, if we
Yeah,
go
no.
far,
Yeah, let's see what.
What's that, Josh?
here comes.
I
council.
would, I would agree with Dan. I think you do have to move with some caution. Among other things, PERS might not be very happy, so I would definitely stick with the published range. And, if somebody comes along and they've got amazing qualifications, the board can talk about adjusting the range at that point. But I think for
just-
purposes
yeah,
of just
But are we gonna
advertising,
talk about salaries before we get to the posting anyway? It's
Well,
gonna be at the April meeting, right?
you guys are gonna be working on.
Right.
Yeah.
The posting, we're basically giving you authority to do that, but part of that posting and the question I'm sure that our consultant's gonna ask is, what is your salary range?
Right.
And we sort of have gotten a hint from our current comp study that our current range is low. We also know that there's a lot of big projects going on here, and I don't want to discourage a good candidate.
Oh, I totally agree.
Josh, I'm not sure why, I hate to, argue with council, but why a job posting can't have a different range than the stated, wage scale that's in particularly for a general manager that's hired by contract, than the wage scale that we're currently paying the current GM.
and Blake, it isn't an absolute prohibition. I just think for, you're a public entity, you're a PERS entity, you do have a range for a reason, and so I think it would be better to stick with that, and, perhaps you could just, riffing on your DOQ suggestion, just say, this is the established salary range, but it's flexible DOQ or something like that.
Again,
Because
I'm a little concerned that we could be,
Why don't we look at what the new range is? And Bert and I can kind of come up with and get a feel and move
Yeah, how
forward.
far are we? Yeah.
all right.
Yeah,
I mean, if we're gonna be 10% over where we are now, we could get to somebody.
And our consultants should have a good idea of what a appropriate salary range should be for a position of this
right.
caliber. And so, again, I guess delegate authority to you guys to, if there's not a touch point in the process where it makes sense to bring it back to the board to pick that, but, we don't wanna discourage.
Well, and your point of the projects that we have coming up in the future, we want to make sure that we can track
Yes,
the very,
Yes,
so
if that's.
we will
not in the
certainly
job
keep that in mind.
description, correct.
We did calculate while you guys have been talking, the current salary is approximately 210 to 268 approximately.
That's the
And,
current range.
yeah, and there is again a proposed increase based on the class and comp study. I just don't remember what.
It's 16%. Gallagher's saying 16%.
16%, okay.
Yeah, so.
to be the median
Yes,
of that on a total comp
Richard,
analysis.
what are you expecting that to come back to the board? Is it our March meeting?
It's April, yeah, we're gonna do it in March, but just because of the amount of stuff that's on the March meeting with the secondary improvement, we'll bring it in.
That's when we would be considering potentially a new salary ranges across the organization,
Yes,
with the GM position being included,
yes.
so.
Also includes some other parameters as far as we've discussed, the implementation and potential for the 8% being paid by the employees. Stuff, so that's just, there could be some other details that come out of that, the parts would be good to know.
So I guess I would want to direct ad hoc committee to have some authority to set that range in consultation with the consultant.
Okay.
I'm, you know,
Sounds like you feel it sounds like.
I'd say, I
Even
feel
though
like,
you-
yeah, I don't wanna advertise for this position at that range, I think it's below from the COF, study, and, that's not to say that, you know, depending on the candidate that comes in, that they might fall within our current range, but I think that, you know,
Why don't we just hold off on advertising until after our April board meeting, because I've got a feeling that between getting someone under contract and having them start their work, I'd be surprised if we're ready to advertise by mid-April anyway. And then if we're gonna change the salary range in mid-April, the advertisement could have the benefit of whatever that updated range is.
they've got.
When do you
3 weeks.
plan on putting the advertisement out?
I look at the timeline in the CPS and
You're right, I'm sorry. I spoke to-
item in there, week 3, they printed and placed ads.
They're not under contract yet.
No, they're not, but they could be.
Well, look, if it's that far off, we'll come back to you before the board meeting, and if we need to do something special before then, we'll do something special.
Okay.
It's not the end of the world.
Yeah, we don't want to delay things by weeks,
Yeah,
but
no,
if
definitely
it's
not in
few
this
days,
case.
So if we need to schedule a special meeting, if we wanna have, we don't wanna delegate that authority to the ad hoc committee and want the full board to make a decision on the range that we're looking at for,
I think it would be weird to have that ad hoc committee set a salary range for a single position when the full board is tasked with that responsibility.
Yeah.
So,
Recommendation.
yeah,
yeah, we don't have,
and it potentially could give the ad hoc committee some opportunity to interface with CPS about
Yeah, that's-
what our current salary range is, what the
It might be
proposed
that-
salary range is.
Might be that plus the 16 doesn't get you to the high end of the range anyway, because it'd be around.
Yeah, it could be that,
It's probably light.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
one of the early.
that's one of the things I want to make sure. we get out.
Right.
What about putting the salary range midway between what Gallagher calculated with our class and comp study?
it sounds like we're gonna, yeah, we're gonna get some information, we may have a special board meeting. To discuss that, and it's possible. I don't know, we've got another board meeting on Wednesday. Is setting of a wage scale, is that a closed session item or an open session item? Josh,
Open session.
open session. So I would ask that maybe you guys just even, because things, we're trying to move fairly quickly, given the timeline we're on. That you have a placeholder in the agenda for GM recruitment process, and maybe, you know, you can give us an update on what you found. Before next Wednesday, maybe, even if there's not anything to report, we'll move on to that item. But maybe we have the ability to,
Would you, it is possible for the March meeting for us to bring forth an updated salary schedule in which the board would adopt a new salary specifically for the GM position, which would then allow the consultant to continue on. We could provide data of what the current salary is, what the proposed salary is for our class and comp study, and sort of move that in a quicker manner, just that one salary, if you have that desire.
So we'd have to I want to make sure we had CPS's input by then. Do you think we could get
Yeah,
that?
that's,
I'll reach out today.
Okay.
I'll reach out this afternoon.
Because my gut tells me, I'm gonna go off the deep end here for a moment. That even with the 16%, based on what the job spec says, plus all the construction and everything else we need to do over time, and if we're looking for somebody with those quals, we're like. That's what my gut tells me, based on what I know we pay other managers up here. But that, you guys would know probably even better than I do, but,
That's my sense as well.
okay, then we're on the same page. So I think we need the CPS input in order to come back and give a proper range to the board to look at.
So do you want that to occur in the March meeting?
Yeah, to me, I'm having a hard time, and Richard, maybe this doesn't seem fair to you, but somehow coupling, I think this one position that's hired by contract, somehow having to set our current GM salary range, tying that to our future GM salary. I think that we have discretionary authority to pay our
I
GM.
don't think it's the same job.
Yeah, I think, and so I don't really think pushing Richard's salary ahead of everybody else is good from a morale standpoint, and I don't think it's necessary and connected directly to what we're gonna choose the range is for our future GM.
So I was under the impression it was a range for the go forward position could impact his salary, but not necessarily. We don't know that for sure yet.
So Vicky, did you say the current top range is 258 or 68,000?
68 approximately.
Yeah, so
if
it's
you come
268,000, so
2.3%,
that, so if the preliminary study is suggesting that go up by 16%, that's 310,000 in top of range.
Correct.
It's not high enough.
What's that?
It's not high enough.
I don't know.
Well, do we know what the GMs up here are making in other places? I have a rough idea.
Well, that's what a lot of this salary study we're gonna be looking at.
Yeah,
has
that's
that
not,
information.
no, that study is not for up here. That study is not right. I looked at that study with the team for 3 hours when I was here, and it's taken places that nobody's gonna come from to come work here. Okay, GM maybe, but not the other people. That
Right.
study is way, I mean,
It's a lot of
what was
areas.
the procurement person, $120,000? I'll take that job tomorrow. That study's not right.
Let's try and stay focused. The question is, again, I think let's put an item on the agenda to discuss the GM recruitment process for this coming Wednesday's board meeting and
Good idea.
information. I
I
really
like
think
that.
salary range that we set for this recruitment is related, but it's also independent from our current salary range.
Yeah, and the calls are different, because we got all this construction coming. I mean, $280 million project is not a walk in the park.
So,
The membrane. Very different.
we good?
Yeah.
Okay, we can discuss this some more then. I don't know that we're gonna come to a conclusion
and if,
right now.
if maybe we can have a special meeting.
Yep.
Only the salary schedule or just their G?
Well, and it also brings to mind, Bert, when you're talking about the future, the current job description.
Yeah, that needs to get beat up for all that.
That needs to, yeah.
Yeah. That's one of the
Okay, so
main
we've
reasons.
appointed the ad hoc committee. We've provided direction regarding the improvement process. Anything else that we need to talk about?
So who has to sign the letter? Can management sign the letter once the ad hoc committee agrees? Or we-
What letter are you talking about?
The engagement letter for who we pick.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes,
So we can do that, okay.
yeah.
Very sure.
Uh,
We're moving fast.
And I think anything else, staff, you guys need additional input?
I
I
understand.
don't have any further comments. I'll see everybody on Wednesday.
Sounds good, Dan. Look forward to seeing you. We got director's comments. Anything else outside of that topic? Thank you guys for putting this special meeting together. Adjourn the meeting at 4:05.
Very good.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
So you got your